The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Walker, and I'm brand manager with retirementhomes.com. Welcome to our June webinar. This month, we are very excited to feature Mona Hilton of Genesis Global Technologies. Mona is an experienced senior living sales professional, and today she's going to be sharing with us her topic, how to go from follow-up failure to follow-up fabulous. This presentation will show senior living sales professionals how to take their sales processes to the next level and improve it significantly. This session is being recorded and will be sent out to participants after the program. As well, there is a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so if you'd like, just raise your hand in the toolbar to the right, type in your question, and time permitting, it will be answered. Now, please welcome Mona.
Well, I thank you, Robert. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much to Retirement Homes for hosting this session. You guys already know what a great resource retirementhomes.com is for all kinds of information as it relates to senior living and senior care. And I'm just honored and privileged to be with you today, so thank you, Robert. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As for those of you who already know me, you know I like to start off with a bang. So let's go ahead and get started. And I want to start off by asking you a question, which is, are you aware that you are giving away as many as 3/4 of your prospects to your competition? You might not quite believe me yet. You might not think you're doing that, but stay tuned because I believe you're in for a big shock. Well, as Robert told you, my name is Mona Hilton. I'm the CEO of Genesis Global Technologies, and we're the authors of Occupancy Advantage. And I am so looking forward to spending the next half hour or so with you today on the phone. I'd love to be able to see your faces and see how you respond to some of the information we're going to talk about today. As Robert mentioned, we're going to talk about a really important topic, which is how to stop the leak that is affecting sales teams everywhere, and how to go from follow-up failure to follow-up fabulous. It's a major topic. It applies to so many people. We've got a lot to talk about, and I hope it'll be of great help for you today in learning how or identifying ways to close more of the leads that you're already getting. So some of you who are on this call are involved in senior living communities, maybe senior services. Maybe you're involved in other types of leasing or home or other healthcare services or what have you. But the great news is today's topic affects every single one of us. And I think that there's going to be something of value for everyone on today. I do, however, have a disclaimer. And my disclaimer is that there's a really good chance that I might step on a few toes today when you hear some of the excuses that you've been told or you've heard or maybe even you said. I'm also going to share some information and statistics that hopefully not, but has a possibility of ruining your day. But don't hang up on me. Stay with me. I promise you my goal is not to embarrass you in any way or to upset you. What I'd like to do is instead give you some strategies, practical tips, and good news that will make you rethink how you're doing things and what you're doing for follow-up. So if you want to, think of me today as your alarm clock. I'm your wake-up call to get you to wake up, see the reality for what it is, and then go about finding ways to fix those. So today, you're looking right now at our agenda. But one of the things I always like to do at the beginning of a webinar is I want to ask you to give yourself the gift of the next half hour. What I mean by that is studies show that if you've been in an industry for more than 3 years, you stop thinking outside the box. You get caught up in what's going on. So today, for the next half hour, 45 minutes or so, give yourself permission. Make a conscious decision to step outside of your normal box. Set aside your limitations that you deal with, maybe your big, long to-do list, the promises you've made, your schedule, maybe any financial concerns that you have, or mindsets that you might have, like, that's not how we do things. So just set those aside, kind of be open-minded to some ideas. And I want to kind of get started with a story. Just a few weeks ago, I learned a really valuable lesson about seeds that I think you're going to like. every few weeks my extended family takes turns hosting family get-togethers. And several weekends ago, we went to my cousin Mary's house. Now, Mary and I are very close. In fact, sometimes I call us M&Ms for Mary and Mona. Get it? M&Ms. We grew up together. Neither one of us have sisters. We only had brothers, so you can imagine what that was like. And we lived within about a mile of each other. So we grew up like sisters. We're very competitive. We love to banter. We have a great time together. One thing that I do know about Mary, though, is whenever I get in a pinch, I always know that Mary has my back. She's very sweet. She's very nurturing. She's, dare I say, motherly. I, on the other hand, well, I tend to be a little bit more on the spicy side. And I tell you that because my story is going to reveal a little bit more of my dark side, my jealousy, if you will. Here's where Mary and I are a little different. Her kids are grown up. She's got a daughter who lives out of town, out of state actually, and a son who's in college. But my kids are still at home. They're still in school. So Mary has time that I don't have. And she's adopted a hobby that I envy. Actually, I'd love to take credit for her hobby. I'd like to think that I got her started on this hobby years ago when I showed off my fabulous herb garden that I was so proud of. But since then, Mary's put me to shame in that area. She's definitely outdone me. Here's a picture of her. She's growing a vegetable garden, an herb garden. She has fruit trees. You could say she makes me green with envy. Well, a few weekends ago, after we had a meal at her home, Mary said, "So who would like to see my garden?" And of course, being as competitive as I am, I had to see her garden. She was beaming with pride, as you can see here. She was showing us her new children because her children are all grown up and gone out of the house. Mary's growing watermelon, pineapple, bananas, green beans, plumosas, tomatoes, avocados, mangoes, a few things I've already forgotten, but you get the idea. She's growing all of her own vegetables and herbs and fruit, but what she's done that's interesting is she's growing all of her second round of vegetables and fruit from seeds that she's harvested from her own plants. So she grew the first round, she harvested the seeds, she figured out how to treat them, and she's growing her second round from her own seeds. So needless to say, yeah, I can't live up to that. But it was a very impressive tour of her garden. She was going into this great detail about how she harvests the seeds and how she dries them out, and how she handles them, and how careful she was with them, and basically her commitment to her garden. Her time, the consistency, everything that she does every day. She was telling us that every day after work, she comes home and she spends the evening in her garden. But she said something that really caught my attention. She said, "I cannot miss even one single day of taking care of my garden." And that kind of got me thinking. Seeds, if you will, are like leaves. In fact, they rhyme. And the seeds that you plant but then neglect, or you don't water if Mary didn't take care of her garden every day, those are the ones that are never going to take root. They never produce the crops or the fruit or anything good. They just, if you will, die of old age. Well, if you take that analogy and apply it to leads, in our case, our leads may die of old age, but more damaging still, they might move to our competition's garden, which is not what we want. On the other hand, seeds or leads that are nurtured, that are cared for consistently, that get the love that they need, those are the ones that develop into healthy plants that grow the delicious food, the delicious vegetables that we get to share with our family, our friends, our colleagues, pretty much everyone. So if you think about it, in sales, that nurturing, that love, that attention is follow-up. Follow-up is what turns those leads into healthy relationships that produce the fruit, if you will, of sales, new residents, new clients, great referral sources that ultimately benefit everyone. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. The truth is that in the last 7 years or so, we've been on one heck of a ride. Wouldn't you agree? Before 2007, most of us were riding the success wave. Sales were so easy. There are many times that prospects were actually fighting to buy from us, and we didn't have to do a whole lot to stay full, to sell out, or to keep our sales pipelines healthy. I think it'd probably be safe to say that some of us might even admit that we actually were able to get lazy and turn into order takers because it was so easy. We could be successful without even trying very much. No effort, no strategy, and yet we were successful. Then, as you well know, it's as if someone turned off the faucet in 2008. It hit, and it hit really hard. Most of us were very unprepared for that crash. So as the pendulum swung the other way, the focus changed from shock and paralysis to more of a heavy-handed sales. We've got to go find sales. We've got to hunt them down. We've got to find them. But in the last, I'd say, 2 years or so, the focus has changed to content marketing. So now the question for us today is, what now? What do we do now? Where are we? That's why I love this cartoon, because it says what everyone is secretly thinking, which is, how do you do that thing that makes sales go up? I think today it'd be fair to say you'd agree that we're putting a lot of emphasis on generating leads, and rightfully so. We're spending the bulk of our time and a lot of our marketing budget on social media, on online efforts, on SEO, which is search engine optimization, on PPC, which is pay-per-click search engines, on printed materials, on websites, on advertising, on outreach and referral programs, on events and on webinars, on purchase leads that we're getting from other online sites, all to fill our funnel. Wow, just describing them to you makes me tired. But in addition to all the money we're spending, we're also spending hours and hours on our efforts of calling on and courting doctors, discharge managers, realtors, attorneys, and other potential referral sources. And if you sat down and you converted all of those hours into dollars, that price tag would be staggering. I can, however, tell you that in the housing industry, senior living housing industry, estimates are that a single lead costs, you ready for this? $500 per lead. Ouch. That's equivalent to 500 small fries at McDonald's. But we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. So $500 per lead. Now, after all that effort and all those marketing dollars are spent to generate the leads, it'd be a real shame to not get your money's worth from those inquiries, right? Unfortunately, as you probably know, that's exactly what's happening. You would think that the leads that come in would be considered expensive, valuable, and precious. Unfortunately, that's not the case. What's shocking is that 80% of all inquiries or leads never receive any type of follow-up. And I can tell you that that's true, firsthand experience. I've been to dozens and dozens of communities, and never once has anyone followed up with me. In fact, I'm lucky if they get my name. But if that's not enough, there was a survey done of managers, and 65% of managers have said follow-up is their #1 business failure. It wasn't PR, it wasn't customer satisfaction, it was follow-up. Pretty staggering, huh? So I think the mystery is solved. It's very clear. Follow-up is the #1 biggest leak in our sales processes, and it's the biggest drain on our success. So where do we start? Well, leads are coming in from new sources than they did prior to 2007. It's no surprise that the largest and fastest growing source of new leads is the Internet. 87% of your inquiries will research you first online. They'll go to your website, they'll go to search engines, they'll go to all the different social media sites, even review sites like Angie's List and Google Plus. In fact, here's a statistic that might blow your mind. Of the people who go to your website, 45% of them will purchase from you or your competition within 12 months. And of those 45%, 75% of those people will buy from the very first person they speak to. Amazing, isn't it? That's staggering. That tells you the importance of your website. But it goes beyond that. Once your web leads contact you online, if you contact them back within 5 minutes of them reaching out to you, you're 100 times, not 100%, 100 times more likely to reach them, engage them, and sell to them than if you wait just 30 minutes. It seems shocking, but it makes a lot of sense because they're still in front of their computer in that 5 minutes. It's still hot on their mind as to why they reached out to you, and I'm pretty willing to bet that your competition hasn't reached out to them that quickly. Now, I've always said that the most damaging statistic is the one that you don't know. The truth is, I'll bet no one on this call really knows for certainty how many prospects they're giving away. We can take a guess at the cost of not following up by estimating lost revenue, which we will in a moment. But I can tell you from firsthand experience that failing to follow up with your past or your current clients and your referral sources is definitely costing you revenue, and you don't even know about it. So if you provide some sort of service or that people need repeatedly, like maybe home health care or services of different kinds, please don't neglect to follow up with your past clients. Let me tell you my story. My mom is 84 years old, and 2 years ago, she had to go in for 3 different procedures in the span of about a year. The first one was on her back. The second one was to have her knee replaced. And the third one was to have a rod removed from her leg that had been put in years earlier in a car accident. So my mom went in for the first procedure on her back. And when she was done with the procedure, the discharge manager talked to her. Clearly, she needed help at home. She lives alone. So they recommended that she use a home health care agency, which, of course, she agreed to. That company came out. I think they were there for about 6 weeks. They did a great job. She was very happy with them. She loved the lady who came. She took care of her. When the 6 weeks was over, she left. She quit coming. But there was no follow-up. They didn't write her a thank you note. There was no call to follow up and check and see how she was doing. Nobody left her a teddy bear saying, you know, we care about you very much or anything like that. No Jotsky. The next thing you know, my mom had to go in to have her knee replaced. This time, she was got a different discharge manager, and that one recommended a different home health care agency. So my mom had no loyalty to the first company, although she liked them. There was no follow-up, no keeping in touch. So she went with the second company. And sure enough, again, they came out. They did a fine job. 6 weeks, I believe it was, something like that they spent with her. They did great, and you know where the story is going. They left. Again, no follow-up call, no thank you note, no little gift, nothing. Nobody checked on her. And here we go again. My mom went in to get her rod removed out of her leg. And this time when she was done, she had no loyalty to the first company or the second company. And her sister, my aunt, who's a few years younger than her, said, oh, I know someone who works at XYZ home health care company. So sure enough, my mom went with a third company. So you get what I'm saying. Here it is. She went through 3 companies, and what's amazing is the statistic you don't know is the most damaging one. The first company and the second company have no idea of the revenue that they lost by not following up with her. Nobody checked on her. They'll never know. The first company lost 2 more sales opportunities and never got them. The other thing to think about is that 82-year-olds, they have sisters who have procedures. They're likely to go in for another procedure at that age. They go to church with other people in their age group. So they know other people and they're recommending. So please, learn from the lesson that my mom went through with home health agencies. Please follow up. All right. So what I want to do right now is kind of take a quick stab at quantifying the cost of not following up. I gave you a practical example, but I want to kind of boil that down into numbers. And I want to use some illustrative numbers that we've already talked about. If you're getting 100 leads, let's just say, and we've already established that the average cost of a lead is $500, and let's just say you're losing 40 of them due to follow-up failure. 40 is half of the estimated 80% that don't get any follow-up. So let's just say half of them would have turned into clients. And let's say that your average annual revenue from a single sale or resident is $36,000, which is about the average for assisted living. Here's what it's costing you. Those 40 leads cost you at $500 a piece, $20,000. But it gets worse. Those same 40 leads, if you multiply them by the revenue they would have generated over the course of the year, $36,000, we're looking at over $1.4 million. Pretty sobering, isn't it? I told you I might ruin your day. But don't give up. You know, I can almost hear you now, and some of you are thinking, you know, Mona, I hear you, but our people, we are doing our follow-up. And if so, my answer to you would be, that's awesome, that's great. You're far ahead of your competition. But let's take a look at follow-up and see, of the people who are doing follow-up, how much follow-up is actually getting done. So of the people who are doing follow-up, 25% make a second contact or a second follow-up and then stop. 12% of people make 3 contacts or 3 follow-up attempts and then stop there. And the best of them, 10%, make more than 3 contacts or 3 follow-up attempts. Now, to understand the full impact of that, we've got to compare that or contrast that with how much follow-up does it take to get a sale? How much do I have to do? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me show you. 2% of sales are made on the second follow-up contact. 5% of sales, that's the best of them, are made on the third contact. 10% of sales are made on the 4th follow-up or contact, and a whopping 80% of sales are made on the 5th to the 12th contact. So by my calculations, that's about 90 or 95% of sales that we're leaving on the table. I know that's sobering, and it's very serious. So let me confidently say, try to lighten this up a little bit for us. The follow-up is in the fortune is in the follow-up. Get it? Fortune cookie? Yeah. It's my attempt at humor. What can I say? So we know that follow-up is such an important factor in success. We know that tenacity pays off. You guys have all heard the story of Colonel Sanders and how many rejections he had to go through before he actually made his fortune with KFC. I mean, I don't think that any of us would have gone that far. He is definitely what I would call the father of tenacity. But you know, follow-up can really be hard. And when you drill down and you ask people, so why aren't you doing follow-up? Or why do you stop doing follow-up? There are some very legitimate reasons for not doing follow-up. And here are some of the ones that we've heard. People say, you know, I'm afraid. I don't want to appear too pushy. I forget to follow up. I don't have time to follow up. Wow. I don't know what to say when I follow up. I don't have systems for it. And I don't know what to do with some of the prospects when I follow up. So I told you I might be stepping on some of your toes. Maybe you've heard some of these before. Maybe, hopefully not, you've said some of these things before. But hang on, because given that follow-up is the #1 failure, it's not just you, it applies to everyone. If we're honest, I think we can all relate. Because when you leave follow-up to sticky notes or a person's memory, like on this laptop, it really becomes a hit or miss proposition at best. But before you go beat up on the folks who are responsible for doing follow-up, let's consider realistically some of the challenges that they face during their day. Here's kind of how it plays out. They get an inquiry at the beginning of the day. They have the best of intentions of following up with that lead. Perhaps they create themselves a note or an Outlook task or whatever. But then someone walks through the door, the phone rings, they get an email from their boss asking for a report. Maybe that's you. And before you know it, time has slipped by, and now there are several inquiries that need to be followed up with, and the days have gone by. The pile has become bigger and bigger and more unmanageable, and now they don't remember who, what, when, or where, and they have what I call an oh shoot moment, where they wake up in the middle of the night and say, oh shoot, was I supposed to call Jane Doe, and what did I promise her, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't follow up with her. Does that sound familiar? I think we've all been there. We can all relate to that. So what's a girl or guy to do? Well, before we start talking about the solution, I want to talk about some tips for follow-up. Just recently, I Googled the words sales follow-up, and I got 969,000 hits. If you Google sales follow-up, you're going to see that everyone recognizes it's a problem. And everyone says you have to do follow-up in order to be successful. But what amazed me when I was looking is that no one really told you how to do it or what to do. So I'm a little bit of a risk taker. I don't mind sticking my neck out there, and I'm going to share with you some of my follow-up tips that I've come up with, and hopefully they'll be useful for you. My very first follow-up tips is that your follow-up should be appropriate for who they are and where they came from. Now, your leads or your inquiries, they come from a variety of different sources. We've already said the website, from referrals, from call-ins, from walk-ins, from different places, maybe from all the marketing you're doing. We've already mentioned that the fastest growing source of leads is the Internet. But what I want to point out here is that where those leads come from determines how you should do your follow-up. Who they are and what they're interested in should also determine the nuances of your follow-up. So that involves doing what we call discovery, drilling down into the reasons that got them to contact you, the motivations, what's on their mind, what's important to them, and then tailor your follow-up with messages that are relevant for them and for their interests and who they are and where they're at in the process. So for example, if they contacted you about your assisted living facility, you don't want to send them information about your hospice services. Now that's totally inappropriate. But instead, you might want to follow up with a personal invitation to an event, maybe a show or a movie or production at your assisted living facility. Something fun and non-threatening. By contrast, if they are interested in a 2-bedroom unit in your independent living community, you don't want to send them a special that you're running this month on a studio unit, obviously. Oftentimes, your web leads will tell you who they are just by the nature of how they come into you. So for example, a lead who downloads an article on ways to talk to your aging parents about assisted living options is most likely the child or the family member of a senior citizen. By contrast, someone who watches a video on your website called 7 Signs Your Patient Needs Assistance at Home, they're most likely a potential referral source. Maybe they're a doctor or discharge manager or an elder care attorney, and your messages to them would be very different than your messages to the child of an aging parent. So the next tip I'd like to share with you is that your follow-up should be consistent and quick. Now we already know that the longer it takes to do your follow-up, the lower statistically the likelihood is that it's actually going to get done. So you've already heard me say that if you can contact your web leads within 5 minutes of them reaching out to you, you're 100 times more likely to reach them, engage them, and sell to them than if you wait just 30 minutes. So the old standard of, when you get an email of a web lead, you send it off to someone and they're expected to contact them within 24 hours, that's too late. You've lost that lead. All right, my third tip is that you want to always have a reason for your follow-up, and you want to have a goal or objective for that follow-up as well. Please do everyone a favor. Don't just call to say, I'm calling to follow up. You know how that makes you feel when someone does that to you. It's really a dead giveaway that they don't have anything of value to tell you. You feel like they're wasting your time, and all you can think about is coming up with an excuse to get off the phone. Admit it. We've all done it. I've actually done it myself recently. Not proud of it, but when you call, have a reason to call. Invite them to an event or a dinner. Even start off with, the reason for my call is I wanted to see if you'd like to come to a show we're doing next week. Maybe you have some new piece of information to give them, something that they might find interesting. Maybe you've had a resident who moved in who is a decorated vet, and they happen to be a decorated vet. Or maybe they're originally from the same town in Minnesota, just like they are. And that's a great excuse to set up a nice lunch between the two of them so that they can interact and make friends and get familiar with one another. Another great reason to call is just to call to ask for a couple of quick questions. Now, those questions would usually start with, I'm curious about what you think about or what you thought about this, that, or whatever. Now, people of all ages love to be asked what they think about something, especially seniors who may not have someone that they can talk to on a regular basis. So the opportunity to share their opinions is always a great thing. It makes them feel valuable and gives them worth. You can also call and start off with something you talked about the last time. So maybe you call and say, you know, how's your Aunt Margaret doing? Maybe the last time that you talked to them, their aunt wasn't feeling very well or had the flu or something like that. The point is you want to engage them in a conversation. You want to be friendly. People don't want to buy from salespeople. They like to buy from friends. It's very natural. And then, of course, with that reason to call, you need to have a defined objective or a call to action. What is your goal? Why are you calling? Ideally, you would have a next step, and that next step would be established when you were on the phone the last time. I'm going to call you next week for whatever that reason is. So you always have a next step. You always have something to jump to. All right, the fourth tip is your follow-up should be personal. Nobody, including all of us on this call, nobody likes canned follow-up emails that look generic, like they were sent to 50,000 people on a distribution list. So never, ever send canned emails. Always personalize your follow-up emails. Maybe you ask about their dog, Rover, or you mentioned that you were thinking of them when you were in the flowers, when you saw their favorite flowers at the grocery store the other day, or something that you discussed in your last conversation. And the cool thing is if you ask a lot of questions beforehand and you take good notes, then when you go to make your follow-up calls or emails, it's a lot easier to make them very personal and refer to something that's important to them. All right, another tip I'd like to share with you, my fifth tip, is that your follow-up path should be standardized and automated. Now, you guys already know this. I'm preaching to the choir. But the problem with leaving follow-up to an individual is that you're going to get very different results depending on who that individual is. But you already know that. Based on the skill level and the experience of the person doing the follow-up, your results are going to vary different. So if you can find ways to standardize and automate your follow-up, that will allow your newbie or your new person who's had a little bit of training to get similar results to your top performer who's been doing this for a long time, because they're following the same steps, maybe even similar messages, and they're doing the same activities. The other good thing about automating your follow-up is that's going to avoid those oh shoot moments that we talked about earlier on, when they say, oh shoot, was I supposed to follow up, and what should I do now, and what should I say? This is a great opportunity to take advantage of technology so that it can help you with your follow-up, so you're doing a great job with it. All right, my last follow-up tip is that your follow-up should be pre-planned. You don't want it to be haphazard. You don't want to be subjective. You don't want to think about it at the last minute or leave it up to a salesperson's memory. So my analogy for that is you wouldn't get into your car and start driving around without a road map or a destination, right? Well, the same thing applies to your follow-up. You know where you're going. You've thought through all the steps ahead of time. You've pre-planned, so you're not winging it. And even if you do happen to hit a detour or a roadblock, you can get around it. You can get back to the path that you defined and stay on track. The point is, you want your sales team's follow-up to be strategic, to be intentional, to be planned. The time to think about doing your follow-up is not when you need to do it. That's too late, and it creates a lot of stress, and it makes you very unproductive, and it lessens the likelihood that your team is going to do follow-up at all. So the idea is to think it through ahead of time. And the great thing about doing follow-up is the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's kind of like a muscle. The more you use a muscle, the stronger it gets, the easier the workouts get, and the more you use it, the better your results. I'm kind of snickering right now because I started Zumba classes, and I was thinking about this the other day. It's so true. When I first got into Zumba, I had no idea what I was doing. I was sweating. It was very hard, and now I'm starting to get the rhythm of it. In fact, I have a picture for you. This is not my Zumba class, but I love it because these are senior citizens, and notice they're all smiling. There's something about Zumba that just makes you happy. Maybe it's because you get to stop at some point. I'm not sure, but Zumba just makes you smile. Okay, so back to our follow-up. The tips that we just went over, they're pretty practical. They make a whole lot of sense. You might even say, you know, Mona, those are pretty simple. I already understood those. But honestly, we know that they're easier to talk about follow-up than it is to do it. So the question becomes, how do we make the transition? Is there a secret to effective, consistent, bulletproof follow-up? And if so, what does that look like? Well, have you ever been out of town or out of the country and stopped at a McDonald's? Do you know why McDonald's is such a successful franchise? Yep, it's their fries. Their fries, they taste the same in Florida as they do in Minnesota or California or Hawaii or any other exotic place I'd love to go to travel and try out their French fries. So how does McDonald's do that? Well, they've created a very successful French fry recipe and then a replicatable, reproducible process that ensures that no matter where you go, no matter who cooks the fries, no matter what language that person speaks, the fries are always the same, they're always uniform, they're always consistent. You're guaranteed a consistent experience from McDonald's because they have automated the system and taken all of the guesswork out of the process. That's the reason why franchise success rates are so high. And that's the model that I would suggest that we consider. After all, shouldn't every experience at your community or with your company be the same memorable white glove experience regardless of who's involved in it, regardless of who greets the prospect or who gives a tour or who does a follow-up? Well, of course you do. And that's why we have this mantra that you can't duplicate your success unless you can replicate your process. I love that. I use that quote all the time. Now, the guy in this cartoon, he has the right idea. But I don't know if Siri is quite the right solution. For those of you who can't read it, it says, Siri, I need more leads and I need them to convert fast. Is there an app for that? And he's talking into his phone. I think what we've done thus far is we've done a pretty good job of establishing the value and the preciousness of leads. But it'd be a crying shame to get new leads, to go to the trouble of reviving dormant prospects. Those are prospects who we haven't heard from in a while, and to get the attention of referral sources, and then to drop the ball. But the problem is if you don't have a system for follow-up, your prospects are going to fall through the cracks. So that's what we're going to tackle next. And what I'd like to do, if I could, is just divert a little bit and show you how our company has addressed follow-up. So does anybody on this call remember the old Ronco commercials? They had a Veggie-Matic and a machine you could put a whole turkey in, press a few buttons, hit start, and they would chant, set it and forget it. Hopefully someone remembers that. Well, we love that idea. So what if you could apply that same set it and forget it principle to your business follow-up? What if you could create entire follow-up processes, including the steps and the messages that were custom for you and for your market, for all the different types of leads that you get, the scenarios, maybe website leads, referral leads, walk-ins, ABC leads, you name it. And then if you could pretty much set and forget your follow-up for those scenarios. Well, we did that, and we thought it would be a great idea, and so we built technology around it. We called it a Task-O-Matic, and I'm going to show you a little bit about how Task-O-Matics work, and then how you can use them or create your own systems. Let me tell you a little bit about our Task-O-Matics. Here's how they work. Task-O-Matics, yes, I know it's a cheesy play on words, but it works. You won't forget it. Task-O-Matics are really designed for different scenarios, but more importantly, every Task-O-Matic has a goal, an objective. So for example, maybe it's a Task-O-Matic for a web lead, and the goal is to get them on the phone to do some discovery, to learn more about them, to find out what they're interested in. A Task-O-Matic allows you to pre-plan and pre-build all of your follow-up sequences, your activities, your calls, your emails, your notes, and other actions that you design to move your prospect towards the goal of that one. So these actions or these activities can be assigned to different people to do different things. In this illustration, it includes, the first one is Jane is supposed to send out a handwritten thank you note, and then the salesperson is supposed to make a call and do discovery, and then somewhere in there, there's an email value proposition that goes out about what a great bargain it is to live here. And maybe part of your follow-up is that you want to send out letters of testimonials and references. That happens down there on day 15. And what's really cool about this is that in our system, Advantage becomes your assistant. It queues up your emails and your letters for you to review, to personalize. Again, don't ever send out canned emails. You want to personalize them. And then it prompts you through your discovery process and guides your team on what to ask during the calls. So when you create these and use either Task-O-Matics or a system like a Task-O-Matic, what you're doing essentially is you're creating those standardized processes, kind of the tracks to run on, like the franchise model. And that gives your top performers and your newbies a level playing field. They all have equal abilities to successfully follow up, successfully follow the same processes, same messages. And regardless of where those leads come from, whether it's your website or from a referral source, you want to put them on the appropriate follow-up path that's based on who they are, that's been you've designed strategically and intentionally with pre-planned so that it engages them, you can nurture the relationship with them, and you can get to your goal, and eventually, of course, the sale. And in the lead nurturing relationship, you would have a follow-up plan for each type of scenario that you deal with. And so your Task-O-Matics are designed for your culture, for how you communicate, your messages, your wording. And then, of course, once your follow-up is in play, it can be redirected along the way as your relationship with that prospect develops, grows, their needs are differently. Maybe they come in for a tour, and you would change how you communicate with them. So think about that, pre-planning and laying out your follow-ups. Think about how many more leads and prospects and referral sources you could manage at the same time, virtually effortlessly, if all your follow-up systems are pre-planned for you, set up for you, even automatically done for you, set it and forget it sell. Pretty cool concept, right? Think about it. It would almost be impossible for anyone to fall through the cracks again. And regardless of where your leads, whether your leads call in, or they're referred to you, or they come from your website, or they walk through your door, we already know those leads are precious, and they need to be nurtured. And follow-up is the best way to nurture your leads and move them into buyers. By having follow-up plans and tracking, you can also eliminate prospects that fall through the gap when you have employee turnover. So when someone on your team leaves, inevitably the relationships and the processes and the opportunities that they have in the works, the people they're talking to, those get lost. unless you have some way of picking up where they left off. Here's my one self-serving slide. This shows you how Task-O-Matics look in our system when your sales team logs on. They don't have to figure out what to do or what to say or what to write or when to do it. They can just breeze through a whole lot of follow-up in just a few seconds. And then you can do what I love to do more, which is push buttons, make calls, and spend my time developing relationships. This is what I love about technology. It serves as my assistant. And so when I can automate my systems, I can focus on the high-value activities, the relationships, that hopefully someday will generate revenue, and then let the technology take care of all the automated things for me. And if you have lingering doubts about how important follow-up is, take a look at some of these actual screenshots from clients. All these clients did was pre-plan and systemize their follow-up. And look at their conversion rates. They're more than double the norm. They go well into the double digits. And keep in mind, those conversion rates equal dollars at the end of the day. So maybe you don't have Task-O-Matics, but you know what? You can still do some of the same types of things, of follow-up tracking using a spreadsheet. Here's an example I created for you. Now, the idea is you're laying out all the different steps for all the different people or the prospects that you're dealing with for different scenarios. Now, obviously, you're going to have to still remember to do the follow-up. You're going to have to create and send out those emails and letters by hand, but at least it's a place to start, and it gives you a reference to what you need to do next for that prospect until they get to the goal, and then, of course, you move them to a different sheet. So we kind of have a term for what we call the systemization. We call it slinky follow-up. We love that term because when you look at a slinky, all it is loop after loop connected over and over again. It's a very simple but ingenious design. And we say that your marketing and your follow-up should work just like a slinky. So if you start at the top, you do your marketing, you get your leads wherever they come from, and whomever they are, whether they are leads or referral sources or family members. You do discovery to find out more about them, what's important to them, where they're at in the process, who they are, of course. And then you put them on the appropriate follow-up. In our world, we call those Task-O-Matics, a set and forget it. And those follow-ups are determined by who they are. And those follow-ups consistently send them appropriate, relevant messages, again, for who they are and what they're interested in. And then you repeat that cycle over and over and over again. That's the follow-up slinky. And we say you repeat that cycle over and over again until they buy, cry, or get a restraining order, whichever comes first. I'm just kidding, but I still like that. But you know what? If you follow up like a slinky, I know you're going to double your results. I've seen it over and over again. You're probably going to more than double your results. That's why I love Albert Einstein. He had a remarkable knack for seeing the obvious and stating the obvious. So we know that follow-up is our #1 failure. Follow-up is very expensive. It's unnecessary. But the good news is follow-up problems are very fixable. How many more F's can I fit in there? Follow-up failure can turn into follow-up fabulous. And the payoff for just doing your follow-up is so huge into your revenue. It's, you know, there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of concern about competition these days and how do we differentiate yourself and how do we stay relevant to our prospects. And I would say it's really very easy to stand out in a crowded, competitive marketplace. Just follow up and do it meaningfully and do it 5 to 12 times. It's really very much that simple. So in closing, I hope I've gotten you all pumped up about your follow-up. Hopefully you're motivated, you've taken some notes, you're going to go check out what you're doing for follow-up, you're going to ask some questions, you're going to plug any holes that you find. You know, hopefully you've caught the vision of the whole set it and forget it follow-up. And if you would like any assistance with that or if you want to leverage technology to automate that, by all means, contact me. I love to help. This is what I get, as you can tell, this is what I get really passionate about. So I'm going to turn it over to Robert in just a minute, but I want to thank you so much for sharing part of your day with me. It's been a pleasure. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to get your ideas, maybe things that you've done that have worked for you, or maybe even not. My contact information, as well as Robert's, is on the screen. So thank you so much. And Robert, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mona. So we have a couple questions here. One of them you talked a little bit about, not a little bit, you talked about when you're following up, have something, a call to action next. So, let's say you sent a note, something, I was thinking of your loved one, I would like to invite you to an event, etc. Can you give some examples about how you can then take that and turn it into a follow-up without simply saying, great, can I follow up with you next Tuesday?
Well, I think there's several ways to address that. That's an opportunity for you to go get some more information and then come back with them. Let me check into that for you. Let me see what's available. Hey, can I call you and let's chat and talk about what your schedule looks like? Or it's just an opportunity to engage with them and to be friendly and to be helpful and resourceful. People love to work with people who are a resource to them. You're just helping them. It really comes down to that. So any excuse you can get to look into more information and get back with them, or maybe they're in need of something. You can go research that and come back and say, hey, I found a doctor who does this kind of whatever that is. It's just an opportunity to establish a relationship and build on it, nurture it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So you talked as well, Mona, about automated follow-up and about Task-O-Matic. Are there any other ways that a salesperson can automate their follow-up?
Yes. It's not quite automated, but that spreadsheet that I showed you is a great way to plan out. That's the first step, is to plan out what your best practices is, what your ideal follow-up is, for example, for a web lead, or for someone who's come in and had a tour of the community or what have you. So you lay all those out, and then as you saw in that spreadsheet, you would put your prospects across the top, you would put your tasks down the left-hand side for that scenario, and then you can mark off what day, who did it, and those kinds of things, so you're at least tracking them. Yes, you still have to create the emails, and you still have to send the letters and what have you manually, but at least it's a step. It's moving in the right direction to make sure the follow-up doesn't get dropped, which is the key.
Okay, perfect. And we have time for one more question that we have here. Mona, how many follow-ups would you recommend that senior living sales professionals do?
That's a great question. And, the instinct is to say follow up until you get closure. And obviously you want to do that. The rule of thumb is more than 5 to 12 follow-ups is what you need to do in order to get some sort of closure. Now, having said that, say you follow up 5 times and they just don't respond to you at all and they've gone cold. You don't want to waste your time following up with someone who might not have been interested really to begin with. We like to do a technique we call a guilt. So maybe you send out a letter or an email or leave a voicemail that, hey, is everything okay? I haven't heard from you in a while. I'm a little concerned. I just want to make sure you're okay. And usually people, if they weren't just tire kickers and they really were interested, they will call you and tell you something.
Perfect. Great suggestion. Thank you very much, Mona. Again, thank you again, Mona, for that fascinating presentation. I certainly look forward to using these techniques myself, and of course, obviously encourage everyone to do that actively as well. As Mona said, all of our contact information is at the bottom of the screen there, so please we welcome any contact as well. Just as a note as well, the session is being recorded and it will be sent out, so watch your email for that as well. Again, feel free to contact either Mona or myself for more information. Of course, this and others will be sent out as well as appearing on youtube.com/retirementhomes. Next month in July, keep your email inboxes open because we have another set of webinars for you as well. So thank you very much for your time today and have a wonderful day.